go back to being an international student and have to choose which destination to go for, would you again choose US?
Yes, absolutely. It's a really interesting question. Initially, I was thinking of going to UK to study. I ended up getting a Fulbright scholarship to the United States. It is the best thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. I would not change it for the world. I met the best people. I met great students from around the world. Some of my best friends were from England, from India and Bangladesh, actually. The diversity of experience there, the broad perspective of the US education. I ended up with a career as an educator in the United States because I studied in the United States. I still can't believe how lucky I've been over these years just from that one opportunity. It really is quite extraordinary.
Welcome to today's AECC Thoughtcast, where we bring you insights on opportunities and student experiences for Indian international students. Today is incredibly special for us because we've got someone who has been an international student himself and has made a very impressive career out of US education. Joining us today is Dr. Godfrey Gibbons, Dean and Associate Vice President of International Programs at California State University, San Marcos. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Gibbons. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Before we move on to the questions, can you please introduce yourself to our students?
Hi, yes, thank you for that. So my name is Godfrey Gibbons, and I'm the Associate Vice President for International Education at Cal State San Marcos. I grew up in Jamaica, so I was an international student myself.
Oh, wonderful.
I feel very lucky to have this opportunity, both in my job, but I also feel lucky to be in India today having this conversation with you because my own journey took me as a graduate student to the United States. I had to figure out a new society. I had to figure out how to fit in. Yeah. But I also found a great community of other students, which was really, really wonderful for me. And I've had a great career there. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but also looking forward to working with students as they find their path to the United States.
That's so great. I'm sure we'll be touching on all the points that are important for international students because you've done that yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my first question to you is, how do you think the perception of US education has changed among Indian students in the last few years? And what are the factors that have contributed to it?
Yes. So, in the US, we have now what we're calling a knowledge economy. Because we have what we're calling a knowledge economy, a lot of jobs are tied to STEM, right? Okay. It's tied to biotechnology, it's tied to biochemistry, it's also tied to computer science and telecommunication.
Absolutely.
And because of that shift from STEM, students are very smart. They understand what's happening with the economy. And due to that shift to STEM, or that shift towards a knowledge economy, students are wanting to study more within the STEM area. Because of the job opportunities that are available for students. So it's a really understandable shift of that interest due to the very strong economy around knowledge and science and technology.
I agree with you, Dr. Godfrey, because I believe US is on the shortlist for almost most of the international students today. Moving on to the next question, US has long been synonymous with excellent academic and extracurricular opportunities. How do you think US universities manage to stand apart from the other universities in the world?
Right. So I think part of it has to do with the difference in the way we do university education. Okay. So if you're an undergraduate, we start with what we call our general education curriculum, which is a fairly unique thing. In many cases, you go to college to your very specific major and you don't start with a broad general education.
Correct.
The purpose of the broad general education in the US is that every student must start with a common set of core skills. Communication is an important skill in the United States, and we'll talk about that some more later, I think. Critical thinking is a core skill for us in the United States. So it's not just about the specific subject you want to study, but you also must understand the whole human being, the whole economy. You must be able to fit in and adapt to different circumstances over time.
So the holistic picture.
That holistic picture, that's very important in the US education.
Right.
And so that's a very important part. Another important part of US education is options, choices, right? So if I have a conversation with even a European student, they're always fascinated that in the US they get to have choice. There's a core curriculum, there's a curriculum that's tied to your major and your interests, but built inside that, we probably leave about 20% of your degree up to you, so that as a student, you get to choose something that you're very interested in.
Correct.
And you get to expand. So a science student could do some business courses, a business student could do some humanities courses, a humanities student could do computer science courses. That is a very unique feature of the US education system, and something that we're very proud of. And I think it serves students very well.
Absolutely. I think that's a great insight for students watching us today. Also, another thing that I wanted to ask you is that transitioning into a new education system is a very challenging task for any student.
Right.
I believe especially more so for Indian students, because they're exposed to a certain way of evaluation procedures and test formats that are very different from US in India.
Right.
So how do US universities, especially California State University, SM, how do they help students bridge that gap?
Right. So I was one of those students.
Yeah.
I grew up in Jamaica with a very different system.
Yeah.
Even some of our language was a little bit different around higher education.
Okay.
Our writing style, one of the biggest shock, maybe a little bit of a struggle for me when I first went to the United States, is that the writing style was very different.
How so?
So, for example, in Jamaica, we're encouraged to write long, complex sentences.
Okay.
If you want to show that you're a good student, simple sentences that maybe express a single idea or a single thought is not very highly regarded.
Okay.
But in the United States, you're expected to write simple sentences. Each sentence express a single thought, and very clear and very concise.
Okay.
I had to learn that.
So the perspective is different.
Exactly. And I had to learn how to become a student in the United States. I remember I also had a research assistant who she struggled because doing a finance course, she was expected to use a finance calculator.
Okay.
In the United States. In Jamaica or in many parts of the world, she was supposed to solve our finance problems by hand with a paper and a pencil.
Okay.
Right? So there are some differences there in our education system. It doesn't take long to adapt.
Okay.
First of all, I think students who have done it before, people like myself, current students are there to help you, to have a conversation, to say, look, these are the rules in the United States. This is how they do things. And I think that's very helpful. The second thing is my office, the international office. We have advisors that support the students, that helps the students navigate the system, help them understand how they need to adjust. And I have a team of people who their job is to help the students adjust and navigate and do well and succeed. We take it very, very seriously that if we accept a student, our job is to help the student succeed. It's unethical otherwise for us to take a student and then just leave them to be on their own. But beyond that, the university has tutoring, we have a writing center, we have a number of other structures at the university that's built to ensure that every student has the support they need to succeed.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure the students are going to love that they're not alone and there's a whole support system that's built in to make them adapt.
Absolutely. And I will add one more thing. If a student is experiencing any difficulty, speak out.
Yeah.
You won't be disturbing anyone. I know sometimes, depending on the culture you're coming from, the student might see somebody in an office or a faculty member as an authority and maybe a little afraid that I'm disturbing that person and they don't want to be disrupted.
Correct.
In the United States, that's our job.
Right.
Like we are literally there because you're a student.
Correct.
Otherwise, we're not there.
That's
so
quite a take.
It is your job. If a student can come, have that conversation, say, I'm struggling a little bit with this thing. I'm struggling a little bit with that thing.
Correct.
I'm not understanding how this works.
Yeah.
That our job is to help you solve that problem. Yeah. So don't feel shy in any way.
Yeah.
Don't feel as if you're being disruptive or any of that, because our job is literally to help you navigate.
So it's okay to ask for help, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little more on the academic and research opportunities that are available, especially for Indian students at California State University?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So the first thing I will say, at Cal State San Marcos, we consider ourselves semi-applied.
Okay.
So yes, your textbook learning, you have to do that, and you have to be very good at doing your textbook learning. But especially starting with STEM, students by year 2, maybe early year 3, they're in the lab. You have to be in the lab.
Okay.
Every professor will have a project that for you to work on.
Okay.
Or sometimes we have a project, especially for master students, sometimes we have a project that's been defined by a company.
Okay.
Say, for example, students in biotech.
So the exposure starts right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning.
Excellent.
We'll have a project from a company that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
If you're a business student, we have this program in business called Senior Experience for undergrad and Master's Experience for MBA students.
Okay.
And the way this works is a company will have a problem that they're trying to solve.
Okay.
So this is not a textbook problem or a textbook scenario. A company has a problem they need to solve. They'll come to us and they'll say to us, we have this tricky problem we're trying to solve in business.
Okay.
We will put together a team of students, and their job is to work with that executive over the course of the semester to find a solution to this problem.
Excellent.
This is not an extracurricular activity. This is a part of their curriculum. This is required to earn your degree. You cannot earn your degree without doing senior experience.
So the practical element is
It's
absolutely
built
interconnected.
into
Yeah.
the curriculum. It's built into the curriculum
Yeah.
for all of, if it's public health, business, biotechnology, whatever the program is, computer science, the practical experience is built in. If it's software engineering, there's a lab that is also built into your curriculum. So that practical experience is built in. And very often that practical experience is also a connection to a local company.
One of the burning questions that students we meet have is, how do they make sure that their education is future-proof and the skills that they learn while being an international student help them in an increasingly tech-driven job market with so much of focus on AI, on entrepreneurship, on sustainability?
Right.
How do you help students become future-ready?
Right. So this is a very tricky part of higher ed, right? So luckily in the United States, we spend a lot of time sort of researching, we do higher ed and then we research higher ed. Okay. And part of that research helps us understand what makes students succeed over time. So, for some students, there's a focus on the immediate, what's my first job when I'm done?
Yeah.
But we're concerned not just about the first job, we're also concerned about what happens 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out. And here's what we know. We know that communication skills are critical.
Absolutely.
We know that critical thinking skills are critical. It didn't mean a pun there.
Yeah.
We also know that networking skills are critical.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we tend to weave that throughout the curriculum to ensure that students know how to navigate their way through the world. Also, continuous improvement, continual education. Always update your skills. If there's something new that's out, don't be shy about saying, oh, there's a new thing. Just like when you get your new iPhone.
Correct.
We are not shy about exploring all of the new features of our new iPhone. So when a new technology is available or a new concept comes out, you need to jump in and know.
Get your hands dirty.
Yes, exactly. Immerse yourself and make sure that you understand what is happening that's new.
Correct.
So I think that's also one of the purpose of this sort of foundational general education is to make sure that students are getting these lifelong skills. Not just learning the particulars of their major, which they need, but they also need those lifelong skills. And we also create the environment for the networking. Networking is not natural for a lot of people. So I'm an extroverted person. Networking is very natural for me. I can walk into a room, flash my smile, and I'm usually opening somebody's heart. For a lot of people, that's that's a little
That's
bit
difficult.
difficult. They spend a lot of energy trying to network. So we create those opportunities as part of our campus, as part of our degree. We often invite businesses on campus to give the students the ability to get that first crack at talking to an executive. We also have mentorship programs in some of our degrees. They have built-in mentorship programs. Again, the intent is to give students that first crack at talking to somebody who you would not normally be able to engage with.
That's so great, giving up that opportunity and opening up that window for students right there at the college campus.
Yeah.
And I also think one of the favorite things about US education for me is that enough emphasis is given on the critical thinking skills and on the life skills that are so important.
Yes.
Because it's just not about the degree and the
Right.
education, it's about the skills that you learn along with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even the interviewing skills, we spend some time on that too. You know, I want to mention one other thing. So as I said, I grew up in Jamaica. And growing up in Jamaica, there's this expression. I grew up with this expression that says, self-praise is no recommendation. I'm not sure if you have this in India. But what it means is this. It means that you should not sing your own praises.
Okay.
You should let somebody else sing your praises.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that does not work in the United States.
Okay.
In the United States, each individual is their own marketer.
So you have to sell yourself.
You have to sell yourself. You're expected to be your own marketer. So I strongly encourage students. When I talk to international students, I tell them this. I had to learn this.
Yeah.
I had to learn this skill. I remember when I was doing my master's degree and applying for my PhD, and I wrote this very timid letter
Okay.
to apply for my PhD. And one of my friends, who was a master's degree student, he read it. And he said, Godfrey, this will get you nowhere.
Okay.
You have to sell yourself. It's expected that you market your own self and be bold and brave about what you know and how good you are at what you do.
That's wonderful. Another of the more important things I believe our aspiring students would want to know is, how would you describe a typical day for an international student at the California State University campus? How many hours would they be studying? What are the activities that will occupy their day? How would their typical day be like?
So the first thing is that their typical day is going to be sunny.
Okay.
So if you're coming from a place with a lot of rain, that's not going to be your typical day. We
That's
have
good to know.
probably 300 days of sunshine
Oh,
a year.
wow. Okay.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Typical day, the student will probably spend maybe 4 to 6 hours in classes.
Okay.
If they're a STEM student, later on they should expect to be spending a lot of time in the lab,
Okay.
doing hands-on work. They should also expect to spend a good chunk, maybe another couple of hours for each hour in class. You're expected to spend about maybe 2 hours doing assignments or doing or just studying, just catching up with the. Outside of that, there are lots of intramural activities. We have tennis, soccer, rugby, all of the intramural sports.
Okay.
But also, Southern California is about fun. It's about being outside.
Okay.
On a Saturday morning, everybody's awake at 7 o'clock in Southern California because they're either going to the mountains to go hiking, or they're going to the beach, or they're going to the ocean to go surfing, or they're going to the zoo or the safari park. So expect that sort of very laid-back lifestyle.
Okay.
It's also a very laid-back lifestyle. I just mentioned one thing about that. You could easily live in Southern California beside somebody who has $100 million and you will not know.
Okay.
Because all of their days they will be wearing shorts and t-shirts.
Okay.
That's our common thing. People are very laid back, very casual, very inventive, very productive, but also they like to go out and have a lot of fun. But fun means being with nature. That's what fun is in Southern California.
And what about food? Can an Indian student find Indian food there?
Oh yes, this is California.
Okay.
We have a big Indian population. We have lots of different parts of town with grocery stores and restaurants, and yeah, they'll be fine. They'll be it'll be very. In fact, even I eat a lot of Indian food in Southern California.
Okay. So lots to look forward to.
Exactly, lots to look forward to.
We often say that planning to fly abroad for higher education is a very big decision in any student's life.
Yeah.
I believe what we forget is that it's a very big decision in a parent's life too,
Yes.
right? So for all the parents who are watching watching us today, what would your message be that why should they consider CSU in the top list for their students, for their kids?
Right. So the first thing I will say is relax. We're going to take care of your
They're
student.
gonna be fine.
They're going to be fine.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of your student. I will say you're sending your student to people who are professionals who have done this for a long time, who understand what it is to be an international student, who are very committed to their success. As I mentioned, I was an international student, but there are others in my office who are Americans who have also lived abroad for long periods of time. So they also know what it's like with the experience of being in a different country and being a stranger in a different country. So we understand that really, really well. Not just my team, but we also hire students, usually students from your own country, to help the other students navigate in their first semester, sort of understand.
So there's a student community.
There's a student community. We have a lot of student organizations that are affiliations tied to either where you're from or your religion or something like that. So you can relax a little bit. San Marcos also is very safe. We are the safest campus community in California, and it's a massive state. It's a small community that takes very good care of each other. I mentioned that Harvest Fest is coming up in a couple of weeks. I expect that a lot of international students will be volunteers because they get involved, they do things around the community. So your student is going to be well taken care of. We're committed to that.
You've painted quite a picture. It sounds really nice. So moving on to maybe the more stressful part of the application process, the visa interview. So it's challenging to get that appointment for visa interview, especially in the fall intake when there's a high demand. So what would your take be and advice be for a student on how should they plan their application process and timeline so that there's no delay in the visa process?
Yes. I would say probably apply early. I think the later the application, we see a high volume of maybe denial if the application for the visa is like, July, and it seems like maybe it will be very hard to make it to August. So apply early, try to get that appointment early. I think that's very helpful. That's probably would be my main advice. Is to be as early in the process as possible, especially for that very high demand, high stress fall intake.
Another important aspect we wanted to touch is about scholarships. So if a student wants to build their profile and a portfolio in a way that they can aim for the best scholarships in US, what do you think they should be doing right now?
So I think a lot of institutions more generally are looking for students who have done more than just their academics. Yes, you need to have good academics. But a lot of times the universities are looking for students who are well-rounded. They're looking for a little bit of community service. Sometimes they're looking for some work experience. And when you write your letter, they need to know why you want to study at my university. As I said before, you need to really be your own marketer. Don't be shy in explaining your goals, your interests. Why is it that you want to be at this university? So your academics are important, but what else are you doing to build your profile? I think that's very, very important as well.
Can you elaborate a little more on the relationship between California State University and Study Group?
Yes, so Study Group is one of our partners that help us, recruit international students. We've found them, the relationship is fairly new for us, but we've found them to be a reliable partner so far. We are hoping that it will help us to grow our enrollment. Coming out of the pandemic, there has been a shift in mindset. Students and parents are a little bit reluctant because they have, of course, experienced a pandemic, and I think that shifted everybody's mind a little bit. So we're hoping that some of these relationships with larger companies will help us grow back. We're not trying to have just massive numbers of international students, but we also believe that it's very critical for our local students to interact with students from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of our goal, is to make sure that we have a critical mass of international students so that that partnership between domestic and international is built.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that I think this relationship is so critical
Diversity
for us.
is very important.
It's very important for us.
Yeah.
We already have a very diverse campus from a US standpoint,
Okay.
but we also want more international diversity in our student body.
All right. Dr. Gibbons, how do university admissions team decide whether a student is prospective for a scholarship? What kind of part SOP plays in giving a scholarship? And what is it that a student can start building on right now if they aim to get a scholarship in the US?
Okay. So I would say an important thing, if there's a particular application letter or scholarship letter, let's start with that.
Let's talk about the scholarship essays, I think.
Essay, yes. Yeah. Don't write something like, I'm coming to your university because I want to study at a top-ranked university in the United States.
Okay.
Because the admissions counselor probably has read that 300 times,
yeah.
maybe 3,000 times.
Yeah.
It's better to say something like, I'm a student in physical chemistry. I have an interest in developing medicine for multiple myeloma or something like that. Or I have a family connection. My grandmother suffered from this illness, and that has made my passion about solving this illness, that's created my passion. This university has a program or a professor or a lab that's working in this area. And so I'm interested in coming to this university because this university has the resources that will help me in my education and also help me reach my goal in finding a cure for this.
So the authenticity has to shine through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The authenticity and the personal connection has to shine through. And I think that is one of the most important things. I know you could use AI to help you write that letter. But if they are looking at 3,000 AI generated letters, they're also going to know that they're looking at 3,000 AI generated letters. So it has to be personal, and it also has to be credible. So if you're saying, I'm coming to study this subject because you have a top ranked program in this area and the university doesn't, they also know that, right? So it has to be genuine and authentic.
Correct.
I think that's really, very important.
Right.
I said you need to market yourself. You need to be your own marketer, but it also has to be also credible. So if you're good at something, say you're good at it, but you have to also be able to back it up with evidence.
Correct.
Don't think you can sort of, pardon my language, BS your way through it. It won't work. They will see through that.
Right.
So you have to be able to back up your claims with the evidence. So I think those are just important parts of how you go about putting that scholarship essay together.
Correct. And we all know that it's very, very important to get good academic scores.
Right.
But besides the good academic scores, if I ask you what are the top 3 things that will get a student a scholarship, what would those be?
So I will talk about there's one very important one that I'll start with, which is we have noticed more and more, especially for graduate school, letters of recommendation that seem more generic.
Oh, okay.
We've also seen examples, for example, where the letter of recommendation is referring to a she, but it's the application for a he. So that, of course,
is a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. Yes. So I know it's a lot of work.
Right.
But try as much as possible to make sure that the person who is writing your letter really truly knows you.
Yeah, so choose your recommenders
Choose
wisely.
recommenders well.
Yeah.
We trust what the recommender is trying to say about the student. So choose your recommender wisely.
Correct.
I think another one is if the student has any kind of, especially in science, you need to have a little bit of applied experience.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be work experience, doesn't have to be a job, but a little bit of lab experience. I worked on this project with my professor. This is what I learned from working on this project with my professor. That's important. And then the final thing is, what exactly are your goals?
Correct.
What are you trying to accomplish? Because the university is trying to evaluate, can we help you achieve those goals?
Right. So you have to correlate that.
You have to correlate, what are my goals and how can this university help me achieve my goals? I think those 3 things together are really quite important.
Thank you so much, Dr. Godfrey. It was so interesting to hear, and thank you for sharing your journey with us as an international student. You've touched on all the important aspects that are going to be vital for a student to decide on how to move forward. Thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I've had a wonderful time in India so far. I have another week or so to go. I'm looking forward to that, and I'll be happy to come back at any time.
That's great. I hope you have a great rest of your trip.
All right. Thank you.
I hope you loved today's episode and watch our content regularly. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe the channel. Stay tuned for more such videos.